Welcome. Well, it's a Confessions podcast. Thanks very much indeed for downloading us. We've got another audio array of terrible sins from the rather awful Radio 2 listener. Gets up to very bad stuff, you know. This week's Concise Collection features a Craven Christmas card cover-up, a perfumed present prank, a funeral farewell faux pas, and a stumped serving suggestion like this. Here's tonight's confession, which comes from Sarah. Father Simon and the Consoling Compassionate Collective. This is a funeral confession. You did ask for them, so please look kindly on my misdeed. 15 years ago in February, my elderly mother died. A couple of months prior to this, I had bought and addressed Christmas cards to all her friends and asked her just to sign her name on them, assuring her that I would do the rest and make sure that they were posted, which I did. She was very grateful for the help. 2 months later, she peacefully passed away, and I duly contacted everyone that I could think of who knew her and who might want to attend her funeral. We'd moved some distance from her old hometown, and many of her friends were also elderly, so they weren't able to make the journey. Anyway, a year passed, and Christmas came round again. In mid-December, to my horror and shame, a Christmas card arrived, addressed to my mum, from one of her oldest friends, who also happened to be my godmother. And it was then that I realised I had neglected to tell her that Mum had died 10 months previously. Well, obviously I felt awful. How could I have forgotten my own godmother? I couldn't exactly say, "Oh, sorry, I forgot to tell you." So I then did, in Sarah's words, what I think every responsible goddaughter should do in such a situation. I found one of Mum's signed cards from the previous year, and I posted it to her friend, hoping that she wouldn't notice that the picture on the front was identical to the card she'd received the Christmas before. "Wishing you a blessed time this Christmas, love, Ethel." That's what it said. Seemed like a neat thing to do. So 2 months later, I finally sent my godmother a letter telling her that Mum had sadly passed away. I obviously didn't include details of the funeral because that had taken place about a year before. Anyway, a note arrives in reply. Sympathies, condolences, memories, that kind of thing. My heart, Father Simon, is in my mouth at this point. What if she wants to come and pay her respects? How big can this lie get? Anyway, fortunately, she said that she didn't feel up to the journey, and I have to admit, I exhaled and calmed down all at the same time. My godmother has also since passed away, so she was either none the wiser or now knows all about my sin, depending on your point of view. So there's actually no one left really from whom I need to ask forgiveness, but perhaps this is just means of unburdening myself and to be reassured by the select holy sages. I'm looking at them that no real harm was done. In my defence, I know that my late mum, who had a wicked sense of humour, would have found this extremely funny. I just think it's just an interesting thing, given the... Obviously, forgetting someone from the list is the kind of thing that anyone could do, but then to actually say, I know, I'll send them another card from my recently deceased mother just to get me out of this slightly tight situation is certainly very innovative, Sarah, and Sarah thinks that it's what every responsible goddaughter should do in that situation. No harm done, but let's see what Sister Rebecca makes of it.
Well, I can see why she didn't want to fess up to her godmother, because it is embarrassing that she forgot to tell her. But if she was going to tell such a big lie, why not just tell a smaller lie and say, "Didn't you get my letter?" and sort of blame, somebody else, for the letter not having been delivered. I think that would have been a sort of...
A lie is a lie, Rebecca.
A lie is a lie, it's very true, but she was prepared to tell a really big lie, which if the godmother had found out about
wasn't
it...
really a lie,
What, saying that her best friend is still alive a year after she died? I think that's a pretty big lie. So I think, Sarah, I'm really sorry about this, but I'm not forgiving.
Controversial. Bobby from the Priory.
Well, it's a bit like Rebecca. One thing I would say is you're absolutely forgiven for forgetting to tell your godmother. Your own grief and all the paraphernalia that goes with it and all the things you have to sort out is absolutely fine that someone gets missed off the list from your point of view. I do think, though, from somebody else's point of view, they can feel really deeply aggrieved. So I understand why you wanted to save your godmother from that, because she'd have thought she'd missed it. Having said that, that was a huge risk, and luckily you got away with it. So I wouldn't advise anyone doing that. I'm going to say you are absolutely forgiven and well done of getting through it and saving everything, including yourself. But I don't do it.
I don't think many people are going to find themselves in a similar situation, but there were words of caution from Sister Bobby. What do you say, Brother Matt?
I would say a maxim in life is if faced with having to tell a big lie or a small lie, always go for the big lie, because the big lie is less likely to be found out, because the smaller lie, people will go, "Oh, you're probably telling a lie there," whereas the big lie, people will go, "Well, he couldn't possibly be making that up, so it's probably true." So, and for that reason alone, Sarah, I think you made made the right call. I'm sure everyone involved with it will have seen the funny side anyway. Yes, forgiven.
Do you always pass on advice like that to your son? You know, if he
Yes.
says, "Dad, I'm not quite sure what I should do. I'm in an awkward situation."
Well, son, when in life choosing between a big lie and a small lie, always go for the one that people think, oh, well, he couldn't possibly make that up. I'm not obviously advocating
No, I
that,
think
by
you
the
are.
way, if you're listening.
Brian sends in tonight's tale. Brian, on his confession, thank you, confessions@bbc.co.uk. Someone has turned up the thermostat in this room. It is now like the hottest it's ever been. Father, Son and the Collective, I'm writing to confess and ask your forgiveness for my recent actions in relation to my mother's birthday gift, the consequences of which are yet to unfold. So the final part of this confession actually hasn't happened yet. I like these. It all began in the weeks leading up to my mum's birthday. My mum, as much as we all love her, is a notoriously difficult person to buy presents for. And over the years, my many attempts to show some thought and initiative when it comes to gifts have always fallen on stony ground. So more recently, I have adopted the policy that it's better to take mum on a shopping trip, and then she can give her a number of options, and then she says what she likes, and then I go back without her at a later date to purchase the gifts that she chose. When this year's birthday came around, I took mum around town, and amongst other things, she pointed out to a very expensive bottle of perfume which she really liked. So as per the procedure, I waited until she was elsewhere and bought the aforementioned perfume as her birthday gift, as well as some pretty paper, so I could wrap it myself for a more personal touch. Later that evening, I'm at the kitchen table, sellotape and scissors poised, about to wrap the present. Now, the problem with this whole present buying procedure is that it lacks an element of surprise, as Mum always has a rough idea of what she's getting. So it's at this point I get an idea. Mum would suspect from the shape and size of the wrapped box that this was the perfume that she pointed to. So I decided I'd give her an unexpected surprise when she opened her presents. I very carefully unfolded and then removed the clear outer cellophane from the perfume's box, opened it and removed the bottle of perfume. In its place, I put a rather manky stone from the garden of roughly equal weight, and then very carefully reassembled the packaging so it looked untouched. With a knowing chuckle, I then wrapped the box up, imagining my mum's confusion when she opens a gift and finds a muddy pebble in place of her expensive perfume. How hilarious can
Lol.
that... Yes, completely lol. Dead amaze. A few days later, her birthday arrives. I hand over a gift. She removes the wrapping paper and says, "Oh, how lovely," in a forced sense of enthusiasm. I think we know the tone of voice. We've all heard it. However, she does not remove the outer cellophane. She just gives the box a shake and a sniff and places it to one side. Although I was slightly disheartened that she didn't open the gift there and then, I didn't get to see her face when she discovered the eau de pebble inside. I decided I'd bite my tongue, as she would surely open the box soon. A couple of days pass, and Mum has not mentioned her missing perfume yet. So one evening, we're sat around eating dinner. She turns to me and says, somewhat ironically, "Son, I have a confession to make." Rather confused, I say, "Go on." She continues, "Well, my boss came round to see me today, and she mentioned it was her 50th birthday next week." I should mention here that her boss is also a long-term friend. She says, "I realised I'd completely forgotten to get her anything, and she's scrambling around the house looking for something to give her, and I'm really sorry, but I ended up wrapping the perfume that you gave to me and giving it to her. And it was still in its packaging, so everything is going to be fine, but, you know." So this is where I need to ask your forgiveness, not just for playing the original practical joke on Mum, but also for what I did in reaction to hearing that Mum had passed the perfume along to her boss. For a split second, I debated telling Mum what I'd done so that she could contact her colleague and explain that her very unfunny son had done before she opened her present. However, I must confess that in that moment I decided I would keep the joke to myself and leave Mum to deal with the embarrassment when her colleague calls to ask why she had given her perfectly, pristinely wrapped piece of rather dull flint as a birthday gift. As I mentioned earlier, that call is yet to come, as the colleague's birthday is in a few days' time. I can only hope that she sees the funny side and the mum still has a job to go to by this time next week. Wow. So we don't know what the final part of this story is, but it may well be that the boss thinks, this is an insult, this is an outrage, you're fired. Or maybe she just has a good laugh. But it's a bit of a bizarre thing. Oh, it's perfume. Oh, no, it's a stone. What do you think, Sister Rebecca?
I think it's difficult, this one. It's very sweet for Brian to take his mum shopping for her birthday present. So I think that shows that he's
doing his
a nice
best.
bloke. The fact that I don't really understand the practical joke thing, really, but I suppose, yeah, it's going to be a bit more interesting than just receiving a bottle of perfume. But it was kind of the mother's fault for re-gifting his present to her. It's really difficult, isn't it? The fact that it's not actually too late to save this situation means that I think that Brian should tell his mum, and that the mum should call the boss, because she might lose her job otherwise, and say that she's made a terrible mistake and given her the wrong present, which was actually meant for somebody else, or something like that.
I could have got this a year ago. But anyway.
I think that that's true. I think that you are forgiven if you do that. That's what I'm saying.
Right, so he actually has to do something.
If you salvage the situation now.
Actually, penance. Actually, this is the extra bit. If found guilty, what should you do to make it better? Anyway, Sister Bobby from the Priory.
Yep, forgiven for the practical joke. I don't mind that at all. She's forgiven for regifting. I don't blame her for that either.
It's a nightmare world, regifting.
No, well, it's fine. It was fine. She thought, really nice, expensive present to her boss, and she didn't have time. Makes sense. He is absolutely not forgiven for letting it go beyond to the point of safety. There is a point of return where everyone can laugh about what happens, his mum and everything else. It's absolutely fine. But basically, if he lets it go on any further, then, no Christmas cards. No Mother's Day cards anymore.
I think regifting confessions there could well be quite a few of those because it's fraught with danger.
Not forgiven, Brian.
All right, Matt.
My spidey sense is tingling on this one because
Really?
I think this is an elaborate bluff by the mum. I think the mum knows full well that there is just a pebble inside this. She has made up this story about the boss wanting a gift in order to try and smoke out whether is my son going to actually admit to me that he just put a pebble into my perfume box. So I'm going to come up with this story just to see whether he'll admit it, and you haven't. So it's a kind of Mexican standoff between mother and son that is going on. I don't think I don't think the boss is involved. I don't think the boss is there at all. I think this is an excellent bluff. So I am definitely going to forgive Brian's mum. Brian doesn't have anything to be forgiven for because actually it's all been made up by Brian's mum, who has excellently come up with this.
You should be a
bluff.
copper. You should
Yes.
definitely be a copper.
Yes.
Your spidey senses will be in there,
Yes.
and you'd work out every crime instantly.
Correct. Yes. Number one in the world. I think you'll find.
Imagine if Matt ever does jury service. That would be scary. Definitely guilty. I can just tell. This one comes from Neil. Neil sends in tonight's tale. Dear Father Simon and the Collective. My confession goes back to the late 80s, when I was a young and enthusiastic member of the Royal Observer Corps, ROC to its friends. This was a fine organisation originally established during the First World War with the admirable intention of identifying enemy aircraft. It was skillfully converted during the Cold War paranoia of the 60s into a body which would notify you of a Russian nuclear missile by means of a siren politely sounding from the top of a hill nearby. Any lucky survivors would then be advised by a celebratory blast of the same siren a few weeks later that it was safe to emerge from under their kitchen table and enter the brave new post-apocalyptic world. This is what the Royal Observer Corps got up to. In practice, the ROC was great fun. We had our own uniform, more of which later, and our own special bunker buried deep into the Cheshire countryside in which to sit out the anticipated global devastation. It was a phrase that hasn't turned up in a confession before. It was the size of a shed and came with the luxury of a bunk bed, a strip light, and an impressive collection of tinned meats and fruit. How entertaining can that be? Most of our time on duty was actually spent cutting the grass above the bunker, having polite arguments with CND members over the barbed wire fence, and talking to other bunker incumbents into our LST, which stands, obviously, as you know, for loudspeaker telephone, which was as high-tech as it got in those far-off days. Anyway, to our uniform, which is sadly central to the confession. It was a smart affair, closely following the lines of a Second World War RAF outfit, and came complete with a beret, blue shirt, black tie, and remarkably sturdy shoes, which I continued to use for office wear many years after the ROC disbanded. We even got a nuclear biological chemical suit, which I wore when servicing my car. I was so pleased with the uniform that I once continued to wear it after an ROC meeting and went night clubbing in it. Without the beret, obviously, I didn't want to make a fool of myself.
Well,
No, Neil, obviously, heaven forfend. And so comes the confession. Sadly, one of our tribe of 10 became 9. One of our most well-respected and fastidious members passed away. John's widow requested that the remaining members of our unit acted as a guard of honour at the funeral, and the arrangements were duly made. So we all turned up. We saluted the coffin on the way into the crematorium, though I have to say, to the general bemusement of all the mourners who were clearly unaware of John's extracurricular activities in the Corps. We stood resolutely, resplendent in our blue uniforms and handy black ties. The service then commenced in the manner in which you've probably guessed, when the vicar asked us to join in the celebration of Vincent's life. Yes, our worst fears were confirmed. We had no option to remain seated, growing hotter and hotter in our berets and wool uniforms, whilst remembering Vincent, a lifelong Chester FC fan, keen gardener, doting grandfather, and complete stranger to us. We were at the wrong funeral. The service finished, we reformed the guard of honour to see the coffin out, admired the floral displays, and touched arms and offered condolences as we thought best. To my immense relief, only one mourner engaged me in conversation. Said, "We didn't know anything about this part of Vincent's life, never knew anything about it." I replied, says Neil, that many of us prefer to keep these matters to ourselves, whilst continuing to stand outside the crematorium in a pseudo-RAF uniform, saluting the coffin. Don't seek forgiveness from the departed John, who knew me well enough to expect nothing less. I do, however, seek forgiveness from Vincent for causing confusion and consternation at his funeral, and by implying to his friends and relatives that he may have been a member of a clandestine organisation that dressed up in strange uniforms and lived under the Cheshire countryside. It doesn't sound a lot of fun in their cabin underground the size of a shed, and if there are 10 of them, come the moment, how are they all going to fit in?
Well, needs must, right?
Well, some of them are going to get left out. That's what I'm thinking. Anyway, we haven't had a Cold War-themed confession, so it's in. We've had quite a few funeral-based ones. Thank you for that from the Royal Observer Corps. What do you say, Sister Rebecca?
Well, I think, because there were several of them at this funeral, they couldn't have crept out quietly, so they were stuck there.
They were
and I
kind
think,
of stuck.
Good for them for being discreet at the end and not saying anything and not letting, anyone realise that they were at the wrong funeral. So I think they really had no choice in the matter, and as Neil said, his friend wouldn't have minded. So as for the sort of odd looks that they would have got from other people, I don't. If they'd kind of turned up in completely different outfits, not some kind of was it RAF they thought they were?
Yeah, it was a bit like RAF.
Yeah, I think that that's a hobby that could be quite a laudable hobby. So no harm done anywhere really, and you're forgiven.
What kind of a guy goes to a disco in a nuclear biological chemical suit? Anyway, Bobby's got a hand up. Is it you?
Well, it was the 80s, no, and he could have been a new romantic. Didn't wear the beret, did he? That would have worked. Could have been a member of Spandau Ballet. Don't you think?
Did they wear nuclear biological chemical suits?
No, well, it's not the biological suit. It was the uniform, wasn't
That was
it?
in the car. That was when he was changing the car. He was wearing that suit.
Yeah.
You can't tell what he's going to wear.
The clues are in the story.
I think this is really easy. They, like Rebecca said, they maintained decorum in this situation. It's really difficult, and you can't add to the family's grief. They're already dealing with a very, very difficult situation. The best thing, actually, in this is to collectively keep stum and wish everybody well and leave as quick as you can and say nothing.
Anyway, yeah, I think that's
Forgiven.
right. And maybe Vincent got a more impressive send-off as a result of
Well,
this.
that would be my point, is that, which of us is going to get a guard of honour when we shuffle off? And Vincent did, so Vincent wins out of this, so there is nothing to forgive there. The underground shed, though, sounds dreadful. Frankly, I'd rather take my chances above ground rather than get stuck in a shed with 10 other people and a strip light and a bunk bed.
You'll take your chances, in a nuclear explosion?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'd rather that than have
I'm not
to
having
share.
the heating on in September. All right, so you're forgiving or
Yeah,
not?
I'm forgiving, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
This one comes from Don. Don, thank you very much. Well, actually, it's not Don at all, but you're going to find out why. Father Simon and the small collective and huge deciding few. My name, at this moment in time, for various reasons, is Don. But as you're about to find out, it's a fake name. It's the summer of '96. And I was a young, impressionable Cumbrian chef, just 17 years old. I managed to make this a sporting and a culinary confession for you.
Well done.
Okay,
Fantastic.
thanks very much indeed. Whilst at Catering College in Cumbria, I was given a summer job working at a well-known cricketing venue. You're going to work it out, it's fine.
Yeah.
And this summer, England were playing India. Hick, Atherton, Stewart and Co., Tendulkar, Srinath, Ganguly and Co., they're all there. playing. Great series. The kitchen I worked in was in one of the stands. The High and the Mighty ate here. Sir Tim Rice, Andrew Lloyd Webber, Sir John Major and John Paul Getty were all in box 3. How about that?
My goodness.
Could be anywhere.
Yeah.
Oh. Excuse me. We would pass the nursery end of the ground on our way to the kitchen, where the players practiced. This is also where the hallowed turf cuttings would go, when they cut the grass around the playing area. This is the grass of legend, revered around the world. It had been tended, cultivated, caressed, mown, and then tended, cultivated, caressed, and mown again, and so on. On this particular day, we were running behind in the kitchen. Imagine that. Can you imagine? I'd been at work since 4:30 in the morning, and our prep list was huge. The night before, we would order stuff from the dry and fridge stores. What's that?
Yeah, dry stores. So they're two different ones. One of
Is that
them
like the larder?
Yeah, where you
Okay.
want dry goods or one where you keep them cold.
And it would arrive in the morning, and mise en place would ensue.
Yeah, but basically you just get everything ready for the day's service.
So setting up.
Yeah, chopping up all your vegetables.
Just half an hour before lunch was served, the sous chef, the sous chef doing...
Yes,
assistant.
one of the under chefs.
Right, under chef.
This is like our own living glossary. This is
Fantastic.
superb.
So I kept it for a third. Realised that the soup of the day had not been made for all the aforementioned famous VIPs and dignitaries. We rung the fridge stores to see if anything could be sent quick. Pronto. No was the response. Well, Mr. Sous Chef had to think fast and think on his feet. Let's make cream of watercress soup, he said. What kind of accent would he have normally, would you think?
Well, presumably he's in London. So cream of watercress.
All right, okay, we'll do that. I can do
nursery
that.
end
That's
and all
fine.
that. Might be wrong.
Right, let's make it cream of watercress soup. Let's check, have we got the ingredients? Cream? Yes, sous chef. White onions? Yes, sous chef. Vegetable bouillon? Yeah. What's that then?
Basically, it's like a stock. There you
Thank
go.
you. Yes, sous chef. Potatoes? Yes, sous chef. Watercress? No, sous
I
chef.
know what's coming.
We haven't got any watercress. None of that, chef. So this is where I seek forgiveness, Father Simon. You see, I would do what I was told in the kitchen because I was only a commie chef.
Yep, again, one of the junior ones, very
junior.
down the line.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with a bag, I was sent to that big pile of cuttings from the nursery end of the cricket ground and told to pick the best bits. But not to go in my chef's whites, but as a proper cricket fan who just wanted to take a memento home. So this is what I did. With no time to go and buy watercress, I substituted it with hallowed turf. Now, maybe this is a new superfood, you never know. It may have given the customers unique cricketing powers. But by all accounts, the soup was enjoyed by many, and no one noticed that the watercress soup had no watercress in it, but did have top-of-the-range grass cuttings in amongst the vegetable bouillon, cream and potatoes. So I do seek forgiveness for turning grass into soup, and from the groundsman for thinking I was some crazed fan after pleading to be allowed some grass cuttings. Yours faithfully, Don the Grass Guzzler. There's a number of things here, I think, but cricketing fans will either be horrified or maybe they'll think, I'd like some soup made out of hallowed turf. Let's see what Sister Rebecca
It sounds
thinks.
delicious, actually. Grass or watercress or whatever you put in it. The other ingredients sound really good.
Does
I'm
the
sure it was
grass not
fine.
matter?
I'm sure it was fine. So that was box 3. Those people who are mentioned in box 3 obviously
Apparently
ate
so.
this grass, which
Yes.
is quite interesting, isn't it? I think that he probably would have had time to go to the nearest shop. Knowing where this place is, there are shops around.
Is there one
Could have
around the
probably-
corner? You
probably
might know.
could
It
have,
might be anywhere. It could be
Probably could have
Edgbaston.
just bought
Yeah.
some
Could be
whatever
Headingley.
shops in
We all know where
Edgbaston
it
too.
is.
Anyway, probably could have just bought some watercress in the nearby shop. But given that there really wasn't any time, so he said, there's nothing poisonous about grass, and they obviously liked the soup, so no harm done, and I'm forgiving.
Could have been Trent Bridge.
No, it wasn't.
As lovely as Birmingham, Nottingham are, I'm not sure if John Paul Getty would have seen too much cricket. He might have done over the years up in Edgbaston, Trent Bridge, but they are great grounds. Now
Could have been Durham.
and you could
It's
eat.
not.
You could eat. You can eat grass. Various places. I've been in Sri Lanka many times and eaten grass, and as part of a curry. In fact, you can walk on it. It's very good for your eyes, and then you cut it and eat it. The only
What?
thing,
You can
absolutely,
walk on
grass,
it, it's good for your
Yes,
eyes.
it's one of us. It's supposed to be Ayurvedic, but basically there are certain grasses which are very good, and that's people walk on them in the morning with a residue on it when they cut them, and then you end up in a curry.
Wash it.
Well, that's the point. With this one, at this particular ground, I would think it's been top dressed quite a few times with lots of things.
Fertiliser.
Absolutely. So my only slight worry is, anyway, all the people you mentioned,
They're all fine. They're all fine. This is 1986.
So there you go. So on this occasion, because of the fact that you could easily have killed them, Don, but you didn't, not forgiven.
Good, very good. Thank you very much. I think Tim and Andrew and Sir John and T'other John, they're fine, brother.
They are all fine. How much watercress would you be putting into the standard watercress into a watercress soup? Not a lot. Really.
No, a lot.
No,
a lot.
Really?
Yeah,
Lots?
big hand. Absolutely. Buckets
So
of it.
It doesn't taste of anything.
So this chef, when he's going to get all of this watercress, is he coming back with a massive bag full of grass?
Grass cutting, yes.
Really?
Yes, because they're going to make a lot of it.
It's like a rucksack full of grass.
A rucksack, yes.
Wow. And no one's saying at any point, what's that guy doing taking a rucksack full of grass?
He's buying hallowed turf.
Well,
He's just a punter.
He is just a bit weird, I think. So I am going to forgive because I can't believe you need that much grass in a watercress soup.
Good, okay, I'll
Yep.
try and work that one out. Well, they were this week's tales. You can send in yours now because you probably thought of half a dozen while they were on. confessions@bbc.co.uk. More in a week, and if you want to join in the fun, you can find us on the Radio 2 website. Why not join the blog, because it's there and it's full of very nice people. And, of course, we're all over social media, such as the Drive Time Facebook page. There's some nice... You'd be surprised how nice everyone there is. Good, decent, upstanding people. Yeah. Thanks.